Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Creating Structure podcast. I'm John Wheaton, your host, as always. Good to have you. My guest today, David Raskoskie, account representative at Alloy Fasteners, Inc., and experienced in the fastener industry. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. I'm very happy to be here to join you.
Absolutely a pleasure to have you. So as typical, I'd like you to tell people who you are, what you do, where you're from, give us a little bit of your background, and we'll get moving.
Okay. Well, John, I'm based out of the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Work here out of my home. Travel up and down the East Coast, really from northernmost point, probably Philadelphia, all the way down to Miami. I also include Ohio and Chicago and Alabama into that sales territory. But I've been in the fastener business for 34 years, primarily selling fasteners for building enclosure systems. So that's going to include metal buildings, metal decking, roofing, windows, doors, hurricane panels. Most of my expertise, however, though, is in the curtain wall and storefront industry.
That's good. And that appeals to our audience in a variety of ways. David, did you grow up in North Carolina?
I did not. I actually grew up in New York State, a little town called Esopus, about 2 hours north of the city, right on the Hudson River. Wound up down here in North Carolina. My dad worked for IBM. So that's how I wound up in Charlotte. But I've been living down here primarily my whole life. I was 17 when I moved down. So I've been down here. I consider myself a Southerner.
I got you. So 17 years old, but like many born elsewhere. And you went to University of North Carolina?
I did. I graduated in 1985 from UNC Charlotte with a degree in business.
Did you have any idea when you were going through college and when you graduated, what it was you would be doing?
No, I didn't. When I was in school, I did work part-time for a local trucking company. So I thought, well, maybe I will, explore, management opportunities within the trucking industry. So I bounced around between that, insurance, selling MRO supplies, for about the first 4 years out of school before I finally focused on and landed with my first fastener manufacturer, which was Star Expansion out of Mountainville, New York. Worked for them for a few years, realized that, hey, you know what? I really like this business. I like the fastener aspect. It's can be some detailed work when you're specifying fasteners and things like that. But Star wasn't a very financially fit company, so I wound up, after a couple of years, going to work for a company called Fabco Fastening System, which was my introduction into the metal building industry. With Fabco, I called on American Buildings, I called on Butler Buildings, all those metal prefab buildings. That business eventually was purchased, and it was blended in with the Elco business. So I was brought over to Elco Construction Products to merge those two product lines together. So some of the product lines in the Elco line today are old Fabco lines. Elco eventually was purchased by DeWalt. That was probably around the 2011, 2012 timeframe. And in 2018, DeWalt, they eliminated my position. I was the sales director for Elco. And like all big corporations, they start looking at the number of people they have and trying to trim. So I wound up getting caught up in that. Had the opportunity, though, to kind of sit back and decide what I wanted to do. I was in a position where I didn't have to go to work immediately. So, talking to a few people, Alloy Fasteners was my largest customer at the time when I left Elco. And, I liked the idea of getting back out into the field. That's kind of how I learned this business, how I grew up in this business, calling on engineers, calling on, installers, getting on job sites, calling on people that are specifying the fasteners. And I wanted to get back to that. My job, pretty much came spreadsheets and conference calls. And I'm not happy sitting in the office. I like to be out in the field. So that's when I decided to come over to Alloy Fasteners. And a little bit of background on Alloy. We're headquartered in Cranston, Rhode Island. And we are a fastener distributor, importer, and manufacturer. We have our own manufacturing facility where we do make a lot of stainless steel, a lot of assembly type screws, type ABs, type Fs, socket head cap screws, self-drillers, that type of thing. And we're very concentrated on what we do. We're not a typical distributor that goes out and calls on every every trade out there. I'm not calling on brick masons. I'm not calling on drywallers. I spend 100% of my time in the curtain wall and storefront industry. That's all I do. Other markets that we're in, we also service the marine industry, any outdoor recreational type products, that type of thing. Those industries that have high corrosion concerns. That's where we spend our time. We have branches in Tennessee. We got one in Missouri. We got one in Indiana, headquartered in Rhode Island. We got a warehouse in North Carolina, and also one out in California.
Wow. Got a bunch of notes already. Quick bookmark. Go back. When you mentioned star expansion, forgive my ignorance. Did that have anything to do with the star anchor? Remember that? Did you ever get that precast star anchor?
That was it.
That was it?
That was it. The PD insert anchor.
PD is it?
And you know where I sold most of those?
Where?
Into the people that made the concrete burial vaults.
Really?
Because that's what they cast into the side of those vaults so they could lower them into the ground.
Wow. So dead people
all the Wilbur burial vault places out there that make those concrete vaults, I called on all of those.
Wow. So dead people and ribbon windows. Yeah, that's a great combination. Well, the reason I bring up star anchors, there may be some engineers listening, and certainly if there's any clients or former clients from Harmon, Baltimore was really big on that star anchor. Harmon, Baltimore, they discovered that. Pete Ballone and some other guys I used to work with. And I remember, that was back in the day where we were just calculating the prying tension on a T anchor on a ribbon window and then using a safety factor before. I remember give me the data. Engineers need data, right? What's the ultimate pullout? There was really no design guide for that, but we wound up using a lot of star anchors, similar to, Richmond spot anchors with the little hook tie, the little ferrule anchors. So that's a great history. Is that anchor still out there?
I don't know. I mean, Star closed down in the early 2000s. So I don't know if somebody purchased that product line or that from them, or I have no idea. I don't see it around, but
there's a lot of ribbon windows and curtain wall sill anchors on precast that are attached with those little star inserts. That's awesome. So you said that Alloy Fastener, let me make sure I got this. You guys purchase and distribute and import, but you also produce as well? You're
correct. Yes.
All of it?
Yep.
Okay, that's great to know. And you mentioned you're on the East Coast. You're on the East Coast, and your territory is pretty big. In fact, I'm speaking from Ohio, so I'm glad you're there. But you said, I was in Tennessee, Missouri, Indiana, North Carolina, California. So are you national, or are you East, Midwest, and then West Coast?
Well, myself, John, I don't have a sales territory. I pretty much go wherever I need to go in the country. Alloy, after being in this business for 30 some odd years, they pretty much gave me a full rein to go where I need to go to generate business. But, there's plenty to do on the East Coast. There is no reason for me to be traveling out West, but we do have people that do cover the West Coast for us as well.
I see. You guys cover mountain states as well?
Yep.
So you'll cover anywhere in the United States?
Yep. Any place that, they're fabricating or installing, curtain wall systems. That's where we're going to be.
Well, that's great. Let's hone in on that. That you spend the Creating Structure podcast is about creating structure in the built world and then creating structure in people's lives, both professionally and personally. And fasteners, I guess I would say they're the unsung hero of the industry. And we know as engineers and as a fastener guy, how important they are. So you're 100% focused on the curtain wall and storefront. Is that only glazed aluminum facade systems? Or are you also panel systems, GFRC, UHPC? Is it anything cladding or mainly glazed aluminum systems?
It's anything cladding. Any type of exterior building cladding. So.
Okay. So, how do you go about what you do? You mentioned, I really like you, I want to get back out in the field. So how do you go about what you do? Who's contacting whom first? Tell us how it works.
Well, John, most of the time it's my initial contact with a prospective customer. Some of these, customers I may find through referral from other customers. We do a lot of business with the fabricators. So a lot of these fabricators, they're buying the fasteners to assemble their pattern, their product or their systems, but it's got to be installed by somebody else. So a lot of times I'm working on both ends of it. I may be working on the assembly side of it, and then I'm also working with the installer out in the field on the fasteners and the anchors he's going to need to install that onto the building. But most of it, John, to be honest with you, it's a lot of cold calling, and when people think of sales and they think of cold calling, I think people sometimes get cold feet, but I love to cold call. I love to walk into places. It's something, I've had some of my best meetings on a cold call where your timing is right and you walk in the door. I use LinkedIn a lot, as far as focusing on people, product managers at certain companies that I might want to be targeting. Most of my work is done with product managers, or should I say project managers. But I also call, as you experience, I also call on the engineering firms, come in and do presentations there. I like to keep in touch with the engineering firms because a lot of times you have problems out in the field that you might need some assistance on fasteners. And I call on the fabricators and I call on the end users. So I try to cover from the beginning all the way through the end of this process.
You saw a big smile on my face when you said you like cold calls. You're speaking my language. I like cold calls too. It takes a certain mentality to like cold calls. One of our biggest accounts in the history of our company was a cold call from a magazine article and me going to Seattle for the first time. And we did, hundreds of thousands of hours of work.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a second because I would like to maybe get some insights for some people out there who are less comfortable with cold calls. But I was going to ask you, is it a relationship business or is it a product business or is it both? Do you focus on the relationship with the people or the products, or are you focusing on a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. Initially it's got to be about the products, getting the products in the hands, that they need to get these systems assembled and installed. From there, I like to build that relationship to where I am their go-to guy on the fastener side of the business, to build that trust that they understand that if I have a condition and I'm not quite sure what I need to use on that, I know David can refer a fastener to me, help me specify that fastener in, and it'll be something that will be accepted by engineering. It's something that I feel comfortable that's going to perform in that application. I'm not going to go home and worry about it. So it's kind of a combination of both.
Can I buy an Elko drill flex from you? Or is that sold directly from somebody else?
No, that all Elko drill flex goes through distribution. So we happen to be the largest Elko distributor in the country.
Okay.
That for the drill flex product, that's how I kind of wound up at Alloy. But that's But when I came to work for Alloy, prior with Elko, I spent years helping to develop the product, the product that's out in the marketplace, the BiFlex, the TapFlex. Those are all projects I worked on when I was at Elko.
Yeah.
And then we took that and we went out to engineering firms and we had, we talked to engineers about this product. We talked to our distribution base and set up all our distribution and trained them to go after that. So it was just a natural progression for me to say, hey, I spent, 30 years doing this. Why don't I go out now and work with the people that actually buy and install this product? They're the ones that really need the knowledge of this product on what to use and what not to use. And, I really kind of find out that when I walk into these places, some of these project managers are very, very, up to date on what they can use in their window systems and their curtain wall systems, what fasteners can be used, what can't be used. But there's also a lot of younger people coming up that aren't that familiar with it, who just think, well, a screw's a screw. It really doesn't make a difference. Whatever I need to put it together, we'll go down to the hardware store and buy it. But that's not the case.
They haven't had the hydrogen embrittlement and stress corrosion cracking conversation yet, right?
Absolutely.
And I was around, I'm dating myself a little bit, but I was around when I worked at PPG as an engineer when, I'd walk out in the shop first few times walked out in the shop, and the fab manager there was like, "You need to see this." And the reinforcing that was attached to the stick wall web of the mullion, every third fastener head was torqued off because we were using tech screws. And CDC, I think Charles Cliff, to his credit, and there's probably others, he was a big driver, I believe, a number of us, but it came to me. I wasn't a developer, but I remember seeing the Elko drill flex. I think Kevin McClintock may have even had a hand in that, but I remember that, we want a ductile shank and we want a hardened tip and something that won't bust off. And here's this SAE J429 grade 5, like a true grade 5 screw that could handle. And people may, like, if we geek out on this, people may be like, why are you talking about this? Because it is so important that, like, to your point, the development of that, a screw is not a screw, is not a screw. It has a specific mechanical property, correct?
Correct. Yeah, John, what you have is when you introduce aluminum into your application, and it can be aluminum attached to steel, or it can be aluminum with a hardened steel fastener. If that gets wet, as you know, it creates hydrogen. There's a galvanic reaction that creates hydrogen, and out of that that hydrogen will attack that fastener, particularly if it's a hardened fastener. And if you install it, if you crack it, now you're allowing some place for that hydrogen to get inside that fastener, and it'll take that fastener and it will cause the core to become brittle. And when that core becomes brittle, now it can't hold design loads. And when it breaks, all that design load on that fastener shifts to the next one. And then that fastener, if that becomes brittle, then that one breaks, and then it just goes down the line. And next thing you know, you have fasteners that are breaking on a building, panels falling off buildings, systems leaking and things like that. So it takes that ductility of a grade 5 or an 18/8 stainless. 18/8 stainless is a ductile product as well.
Absolutely.
But either grade 5 or stainless, neither one of them is hard enough to drill steel. So what you have to do is create that part with a hardened steel point that can drill and tap steel, so that can be used as a drill screw.
Yeah, it's just so important. Like you say, also that the first time we actually spec'd the 300 series and 18/8 stainless, I think it was on Philadelphia Airport, but we found that SFS Stadler, that SX fastener that had like the crimped tip in it.
I remember those old bimetals like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but to your point, the hydrogen embrittlement, stress corrosion cracking is a big deal. And for all the purchasers out there, specifiers, purchasers, engineers, and most of the engineers know, like, let's say structural engineering and the art and science of structural engineering, there's the component that calculates the reaction and the deflection and the moments and all those things. But there's multiple components of structural engineering. And one of them is making sure that you've specified the right grade of material and not some knockoff, because mechanically, the mechanical part is equally important as the structural part, whether it's the right screw or the isolation of the screw, or the isolation of the anchor to the mullion, depending on dissimilar metals and all that stuff. You have to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. So I'm really glad you brought up the, proper materiality and all that stuff. Very important.
Because there's materials out there that I see being used a lot. I see people using 410 stainless steel. 410 is something, again, that should never be used in aluminum. No. When you're attaching aluminum, you want a fastener with a core hardness of Rockwell 34 or below. Well, a standard steel hardened drill screw is 39. 410 stainless is about 41 to 43. So you're getting, pretty hard product that can be easily cracked when it's installed. Now, I tell my customers all the time, when I do lunch and learns, I say, if you send me a list of what you're looking for, your fastener schedule, if you have standard drill screws or you have 410 stainless on that, expect a phone call from me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to sell that product to you until I know where it's going. Sometimes it's okay, metal to metal application or an interior application. But I tell them I'm not going to, sell you something blind, unless I know exactly where it's going and it's going to perform for that application.
Yeah, similar. There's a few banned words here at Wheaton Sprague in our vocabulary, and there's a few banned materials and 400 stainless is a banned material. Yeah. We cannot use it for anything. I don't care, regardless of like whether the customers, well, I've used this before or not, like you're not doing them a favor. You're actually putting them at risk and yourself at risk. Like I would walk away from a job if somebody forced a 400 series stainless, because any engineer that approves that on a curtain wall application doesn't know what they're doing, really.
Right, absolutely. So, and a lot of times when you reach out to a supplier, if they're not versed in, what you are actually trying to assemble or attach, and you ask for stainless steel, they're going to gravitate to 410.
Yeah.
410 is great on a metal building, but in a curtain wall system, like you said, it should never be present. And I've actually had on several occasions where people have, gone out and bought the 410 stainless, and when I find out, how much they paid for it, I'm like, guys, you got to look into this, because 18/8 stainless steel bimetals are not this inexpensive. And they look into it and find out it's 410. It's like, okay, guys, you got to stop right now.
Yeah.
You got to rethink what you're doing. And here's why.
Yeah. No, I hear you. So just
and those project managers are usually pretty grateful.
Yeah. So just for clarity to the audience, and a lot of our audience will know this, but if you don't, we're talking about if you're going to buy a steel self-drilling fastener, it needs to be a Biflex or a drill flex, something that's ductile with a hardened tip. And the same thing with the stainless. It needs to be a 300 series stainless. It needs to have a hardened tip. It needs to have a ductile shank. You're gonna be good there. If you want to install 400 series, you're gonna see problems in stains and broken screws here and there. I want to go back. I'm like going to jump all over. I want to go back to cold calls. We may have some people listening that are sales people or young professionals or whatever. I too like cold calls. It's an adventure. Do you have a certain mindset that you approach cold calls with, or do you shoot from the hip well with your intuition, or is there anything or not that you could communicate that might help some with the fear of cold calls?
Well, first of all, they're not strictly cold calls. I spend a few minutes researching the company. I take a look at what is it that they're doing. I like to take a look at the projects that they've completed in the past. And, so I've got a pretty good idea of what they're doing. Who's, if it's somebody that's installing, I look into whose systems are they installing. Sometimes I can bring a link into that. A lot of times through LinkedIn, I'll find out who their project managers are, so I can go in and ask for somebody specifically. But when I go in, John, my ultimate goal is really just to introduce myself. A lot of times you might get 5 minutes if you get that much. Sometimes you go in and they say, hey, you know what? We really need to talk. Come on in and sit down. We have some questions. Or sometimes you walk in and you don't get anywhere and you get a name to call on. But the key with the cold call and to make it productive is to make sure that you follow up on those. To make a cold call, not being able to really make a connection with anybody and then never approaching that again is really just a waste of time. I always look at this job, when people ask me, I say, my job's easy. It's showing up and following up.
There you go. Breaking it down, keeping it simple.
If you do both of those, you'll be a success, because there's a lot of people that don't do that. Follow up after that call.
Follow up. But when you, when you do a cold call, are you calling in advance to say, hey, I'm David Raskoskie, I'm going to be stopping in, or are you literally opening up the door and saying, can I talk to somebody here? I saw you guys on LinkedIn. I sell fasteners. Like what, or is it a combination of both?
It's mostly just walking in the door cold, and introducing myself and asking, hey, is there a project manager available that I might be able to talk to? Just kind of introduce them. Hey, I work for a fastener manufacturer distributor for the curtain wall storefront industry. Is there a project manager available?
Okay.
And, a lot of times, somebody will come out and speak to you for a few minutes. And like I said, sometimes it's, you get the cold reply saying, well, there's really nobody available. Well, who can I follow up with? My goal is to walk out of there with at the minimum with a name.
Yeah. Name or a business card.
Yeah. And then leave a business card behind, leave a some company information behind, and then make sure you follow up on that in a timely manner. And a lot of times those guys they're going to react positively to that.
So let's go on the complete other side. you have an existing relationship with a client. They know you, you're one of their go-to people. Are you calling on them, or once you build a relationship, they know who to contact? I mean, do they contact you to troubleshoot problems? I mean, how does the relationship develop?
Yeah, well, once that relationship is developed, most of my customers reach out to me, when they have questions, or if, they're having problems in the field, or if they're just, hey, I've got this project I'm working on, I need some help, on the fasteners I'm going to use for it. But I still think it's important, to show up with my customers, 2-3 times a year to walk in the door. I mean, it's hard to keep that relationship going when it's just over the phone. I like to see these guys face to face. One of the biggest tools that I use that I get a lot of success out of is the lunch and learn. I did one in your office back, I think it was August of last year. It's a perfect opportunity to go in and meet the project managers as a group. A lot of times you get to meet field supervisors. A lot of times you get to meet, the production people and out back, that type of thing. And that gives you an hour to an hour and a half where you can sit down and talk to these guys and tell them what it is and how you can help them. Not that I'm here to sell you something, but I'm here to help you. And this is why.
That's good. In fact, that's how we met. And we talked about this podcast then. I had known you prior, but I was impressed by the presentation. It was helpful to our people. And just for the sake of, our audience, from you never know when you're going to need something or somebody, I contacted you, December or something?
Yeah.
Had a customer who is they troubleshoot problem projects and fix them to get them open. This was in New York.
Yep.
And to your point, it was not a curtain wall installer just because of the labor shortages. There was a curtain wall guy putting cover caps on and reglazing. And then there was a steel guy who was putting in fasteners. I mean, they were just buying fasteners from, I don't know, Lowe's or Home Depot or the local person. They were not only they were the wrong diameter, they were the wrong alloy. We didn't know what the alloy was. You couldn't identify them on the heads. And my customer, I said, absolutely not. You got to replace all those. Well, I don't have a source. Do you know a source? So I really appreciated you. Yep. Because I texted you or called you, and then you were on the phone with him. And next thing I know, I think within an hour, he goes, yeah, it's good. David's drop shipping them. They'll be here tomorrow. And they replaced it, and they remediated the whole job in real time. So it's great to have relationships. And I just want to say thanks for that response.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime.
I know it wasn't a big order for you.
That's fine. I don't look at it as always going after the big orders. I look at it as, I'm out there to service this industry, and teach them what they need to know about fastening and how they do that safely and how they do it, to make sure that their projects are successful.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great example. You never know when you're going to need to connect the dots. So you mentioned, we were talking a little bit, just very briefly beforehand, fasteners are the last thing people think about. Do you think people should approach it more early and often, or do you try to communicate that message to people? Is it just is what it is? People are always going to call you last, even though they shouldn't. How do you work with that?
Well, as far as the planning goes, they need to start looking at that when they start their project, because a lot of times, there may be a fastener that's been specified that is not a standard fastener. It's something that needs to be manufactured. And I can't tell you how many times somebody calls me and says, okay, this is what I need. I said, all right, it's not available. I could make it, but it's going to take me 4 to 6 weeks. And they're like, well, I'm on site next week. What do I do? Well, at that point, now we're starting to look for a substitute. So it makes sense to at least initially look in there and see, is there anything unique about this, these details, anything that might cause a problem on lead times? Obviously, the fastener schedule, the count is the last thing that they usually come up with. And we understand that. And we keep, a pretty vast inventory of fasteners because of that. But it's those specials that always kind of throw everybody for a loop. They just assume that, oh, well, if it's on a detail, it's got to be readily available. And it's not.
Are you selling bolts as well, like 5/8 inch diameter bolts, 3/4 inch diameter bolts?
Yeah. We do hex head cap screws, socket head caps, rivets, anything that you could think of that you need to either assemble or install a curtain wall or storefront system is what we do. Now, we only sell fasteners. So like other suppliers, I'm not going to come in and try to sell, power tools or, safety equipment or fall protection. Yeah. We are what I call a fastener company.
Yeah.
There are other people out there or companies that sell fasteners, but we are a true fastener company. That's all we concentrate on.
That's a good differentiator. Talk to me about your lunch and learns. Are you presenting those to design professionals, architects, engineers on the front end, and to manufacturers, installers, tradespeople? Who do you present those to?
Well, normally I don't approach architects, but I do work with, companies like yours. I've made presentations down at CDC, Rice Engineering, all the guys that you could think of that would benefit for something like that. I do a lot of lunch and learns with the fabricators. The last two lunch and learns, or last three lunch and learns I've done have been with Metalworks, Caudier, and YKK. I've got one scheduled with Oldcastle coming up here in a couple of weeks. So I do, approach those fabricators, those national and regional fabricators. But I also do it for the guys that are buying these systems and installing them, because they don't have to worry about what they put the system together with. They're the ones that have to install it in the field. And they're the ones that really need to be cautious on what they're using and where they're purchasing it from. So a typical lunch and learn will start with, I talk a little bit about, what a supplier should bring to the shelf. I'm real big on, every supplier, you need to take a look at price, service, and quality, and pick the two that you want the most, because no supplier can be the best at all. If price is cheap, you're going to have to sacrifice something along the lines on that. If you want the best quality, you're going to have to pay for that. So I always tell them, pick one, pick one of the three or two of the three that are most important to you that you really want to concentrate on. I also spend some time talking about installing fasteners and what type of tooling should be used, because there's, right now everybody loves impact drivers. They're small, they're fast, and they're powerful, but it's not the ideal tool to put in small diameter fasteners, quarter and number 12 fasteners, because you can wring the heads off or crack them or actually burn out a drill screw using one of those. So I spent some time talking about that. And to be honest with you, John, when people have problems in the field with installing drill screws, I can usually solve that problem on the phone.
Wow.
You describe to me what's going on, and I've got a list of, 3 or 4 things. Okay, we're going to start taking a look at this. What's the thickness of the application you're going through? Do you have the correct point on your fastener? Does your point have the capacity to drill what you're wanting it to drill? What type of material are you going into? What kind of tool you're using? How fast is that tool moving? And I can pretty much, 99 times out of 100, solve that for them, right there on the phone. Sometimes it's a little bit more complicated, and then I got to go out to a job site, and I'll do that as well. But I've been doing this long enough to know what the conditions are at the job sites, and what these guys, how they operate out there, to figure out what it is that they're doing. From there, I talked a little bit about our manufacturing, what we bring to the table, what the type of product that we manufacture. I think I had mentioned previously, we manufacture a lot of stainless steel, 18/8 and 3/16 both. We do grade 5, a lot of type ABs, type Fs, self-drilling screws, those type of things, a lot of specials, one-time knockoff special, maybe for a specific application that will never be made again. Some of our specials turn into product lines. And people will, they use it in one application and they wind up using it on several applications beyond that. And then I usually launch into this whole hydrogen-assisted stress corrosion cracking issue on the dissimilar metals and the galvanic reactions and what that hydrogen does and what it causes the fasteners to do. And then talk about how do we prevent that. You can't stop the hydrogen from forming unless you stop using aluminum, but what fasteners do we need to use to prevent you from having failures on a job site?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for that. That's good to know. So if somebody wanted to learn more, they could talk to you, you could do a lunch and learn, you could make
Absolutely.
a presentation to them.
Yeah, they could reach out to me through LinkedIn, and I'll be more than happy, whether you're a customer or not a customer. I'd be more than happy to come in and talk to people about that.
That'd be great. Well, we'll have everything in the show notes. I want to go back to an early comment you made about when you entered the industry. Was there something, I don't think I asked this, was there something in particular that attracted you? I mean, but I'm really fascinated by, let me give more context. I'm really fascinated by what people call, like, people are starting to rediscover this old industries or boring businesses, or, it's not a sexy business like fasteners, really, but everything's held together by a fastener. Was there something in particular? Like, was it the pace? Was it the context? Was it the product? Was it getting out to meet people? Like, what was it that attracted you to the field, to the industry?
Well, I like the idea, first of all, of selling a tangible product that was going to be a repeat buy for a customer. Not a one-time in the door, out the door type of thing, but something where you're going to build a relationship and actually become a supplier for that company. I also like the fact that, as you work on some of these buildings out there, it makes me proud to drive by a building saying, you know what, I supply product on that building. They had a problem in that building and I was able to help them through that product. And over the years, I've made job site calls and, Manhattan, on high rises. I was involved, when they did the Hard Rock Hotel down in Fort Lauderdale, the guitar shaped one. I was involved in that one with Elko, with some products that were being used. I've supplied product on stadiums, you name it. We've supplied product for that. But it was just the fact that, I wanted to go out and build a relationship with my customers, and a long-term repeat relationship, and to help them out and help them to be successful.
That's great. I like that. Many people that I talk to, and me included, I love the tangibility of what we do. But, in the built world, same thing. You can go, yeah, our people, and we engineered that, or we designed that, or we helped get that installed, and it's just fantastic. I know my family gets tired sometimes of saying, yeah, we know you've told us 13 times that you guys, did the engineering for that building. But it's just, it is really cool to do that. So thanks for that.
And as far as it being boring, John, to me, no 2 days are alike. It's always something different. When I wake up in the morning, I usually have a to-do list of things I need to get done or people I need to see. But things come up during the day, and you never see them coming. You don't know what they are, and you don't know how fast you need to react. But there's nothing that feels better that you get a call out of the blue from somebody who's got a problem, like you had mentioned with a guy in New York, and within an hour, you've solved his problem and he's moving on to what he needs to do next.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's not boring to me, and it's not boring to those who know what we're talking about. But on the outside, a young person who doesn't yet know what they want to do, or maybe a person changed careers, I think, gosh, that just sounds horrible, but it's about the people. It's about the applications. It's about the relationship. It's about the tangibility. And that is a beautiful thing. In the end, no matter how high tech your business is, if you're a human being, whether it's a cave, a tent, a straw house, a custom curtain wall clad, but you've got to live in a structure with a reasonably steady temperature and humidity.
Right.
Unless, I'm not talking, if you're a farmer, and God love them, I love being outside, working outside. You're going to be outside all day. But somewhere or another, someplace, your product or service or whatever it is housed in something. And so you can't get away from the built world. I was listening to somebody the other day. They're asking somebody, I think it was on a Twitter stream, what in the world attracted you to construction? And the person was like, same reason, like everybody has to be in something, inside something, sheltered from something. And there's trillions of dollars of assets in North America alone, trillions of dollars. Meta's servers are all in a building. Microsoft's cloud is all in a building. And fasteners and aluminum and glass and steel, and it holds them all together. So to me, it's like, it's awesome. It's like the spine, so.
That's right. Because, all those businesses without a roof over their head would not exist.
Yeah. I mean, it needs to be protected in a controlled environment. Anyway, enough of my rant. That's really good. So I asked you about cold calls. I said, this must align with your energy or unique ability in some way. When you left, when you were excused from DeWalt and you were thinking about what you wanted to do, what was it that drew you back, like that desire, like you knew you wanted to get back into the field and like interacting with customers and not just filling out spreadsheets? Like, is there a particular appeal to you about that?
It's being outside, not being stuck in an office behind a computer. It's out there, meeting new people, creating those new relationships. At Elko, I spent a lot of time training our distributor base, but, these guys are being pulled 100 different ways, and I felt like a lot of these, within this industry, a lot of these people weren't being serviced, with the knowledge that they really need to make their project successful. So I wanted to be able to take what I know and really kind of take it out to the guy that's, out there doing the work, putting these buildings together.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that is good. Being connected to the work. Yeah, some people need to be and some people don't, but that makes sense to me. Are you seeing any particular trends in your region? Or what is my specific? Are you seeing any specific trends in terms of volume increase or reduction in opportunities for buildings?
Well, right now, a lot of my customers, their shops are full. They're doing a lot of work. I got a few that have slowed down, and you know how it is in this business. They're busy for a while. They finish up some buildings. They got some time before the next one starts, so it's kind of up and down. But for the most part, there's a lot of building going on out there now. I'm not seeing as much high rise as I have in the past, but there's a lot of more of the lower rise. There's a lot of hospital work, a lot of university work, that type of work out there. A lot of hotel work going on right now in the hospitality industry. What as far as the type of products they're using. I'm seeing a lot of details or a lot of specifications now being written around two things. One is grade 5, and the other one is 18/8 stainless, but with 100 KSI tensile. And I'm seeing those pop up more and more on details. Now, probably the grade 5 more than others. And when I say grade 5, everybody thinks grade 5 bolts. They think of drill flex. But I'm talking, grade 5 type ABs, 12, 14 by 1.5 hex head type AB. They're calling out grade 5s because they want that 120 KSI tensile strength. I'm seeing it at type F screws. I'm seeing it in machine screws. I'm seeing it at all kinds of screws that they're just starting to write these specifications around grade 5. Now, a lot of that product isn't readily available, but one of the things that we have done at Alloy is we have developed a product line called Allflex. And our Allflex is the stainless steel, the 18/8 stainless steel that meets the 100 KSI tensile specification. Stuff you buy off the shelf coming out of Taiwan, it's probably going to be about 85 KSI, but they're looking for that stronger part. And then we have Allflex G5, which is the grade 5 version of that meets the 120 KSI tensile spec.
That's really good to know.
Yeah, we're seeing that there's a need starting to build for this, and they're starting to ask for this type of product.
Okay, that's really good to know. About particular cities, you mentioned Philadelphia, Miami, Chicago. Sounds like you don't typically get to New York and Boston, or
I don't. We have a sales rep that lives up in Rhode Island, works out of our headquarters, and he handles a lot of the stuff up in New York. There's so much going on up and down the East Coast.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do.
I've spent time in New York. It's fun working in New York, going on those buildings. But it's a chore working in New York.
It is. It's its own ecosystem. It's its own everything.
It's not easy. It's not easy. But right now, I'm probably spending most of my time. There's a lot of work going on in the Carolinas, in Charlotte and Raleigh. I've been spending a good bit of time down in Atlanta. There's a lot going on down in Florida. Now, some of my other customers, they may be, doing business, outside of their immediate area. So I do spend some time, up in the Cleveland area. And then, up in Philadelphia, my customer up in Philadelphia, most of their work is either in Philly or in New York.
That's good. Well, when you're in the Cleveland area, stop by. Just
Absolutely.
You mentioned Metalworks. Are you talking in Kennett Square? Like you're talking Metalworks, like Steve Shar and the gang there? Yeah. We're doing some work with them again, and it also is involving the Technoform block. Are you familiar with the Technoform?
I'm familiar with Technoform. They're a customer of mine. I know William pretty good. I have not met William face to face. But I feel like I have. I talk to him, once, twice a week.
William's a great guy.
Yeah.
William told me, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, I just got to give him props. I don't think I heard this incorrectly. So I think it must be virtually and in person. William told me that he spoke to and or called on 700 architects last year.
Wow.
700.
Wow.
Not by email, somehow interacted with 700. That's a lot.
That's an amazing number. That's an amazing number.
Let's see, there's only 46 working weeks in a year. And I mean, he's a warrior. I like him. I was involved in the development of that product from the start. So I'm really glad to see it.
That's actually the Technoform product. I have a fastener that I supply then. It's a special made by Elko. And I started working on that project in 2009.
Okay, so you started I didn't even know you then, but we were actually working in parallel because we needed a 4.5 inch or a 4.25 inch long drill flex.
Yep.
And that was one of the keys to that product. So I didn't know that you were behind the scenes there, or maybe I did and I just wasn't recognizing because there was a lot of moving parts then. But 2009, that would have been early. That would have been very early on in the actual ideation of the project.
Yeah, that's when I made the first samples for that in 2009.
Long ago?
So I was thrilled when I came to Alloy and found out that, hey, they're an Alloy customer and they're ready to kick this product line off. Wow. So at that point, all your hard work is worth it.
You sound like a natural when it comes to communication, but do you have any particular challenges in communicating your message about? I mean, I think passion and energy is contagious, and you have that. You put the zip and the zing in buying fasteners. But is there any particular challenge you face in communicating your message to people?
Well, time is always a big challenge. Working with a lot of my customers, these project managers, their schedules are pretty packed. They don't always have time to spend on sitting down and listening to what's happening. A lot of times, if they delay on what they need to do, they wind up buying something locally. And the worst thing I ever hear is when I ask somebody, well, what did you do for this application? Well, we needed something quick, so the guys in the field bought something. Well, what did they buy? I don't know. And it makes me cringe, to be honest with you. It really does.
Yeah. You really don't know what's there.
Yeah. So it's that, trying to find a piece of their time during the day, and track them down. The other one is cost. It seems like they never put enough money in the budget for fasteners on a particular project. So a lot of times people will call me and they're looking for a specific fastener and they need to buy 5,000 of them. It's like, guys, these things are $2 a piece and they got $1,200 in the budget for it. So it's a matter of them understanding what some of this stuff costs, and making sure that there's enough money in the budget for that, and then the other one is that, unfortunately, there's other people out there that have built great relationships with their customers as well. And sometimes it's a little tough to get in the door.
Yeah, but I hear you.
We keep trying. I mean, I can tell you stories of, companies I've called on for 5 years before I ever got a purchase order out of them.
Oh yeah.
If the opportunity's there and you feel like you have a service that can help them, you got to keep on doing it till it comes to the point where they say, I see you more than my regular supplier.
Yeah, I always go, I go back to the parable. Sometimes I go back and tell people about read the New Testament parable of the woman begging bread to the unjust judge, Okay, fine. Yeah, fine. You're persistent enough. Like there's a line between annoying and persistent, but it is good to be persistent. I've had similar experiences, I would say, to people listening to never give up because, one particular client I called on 3 years before we ever got our first order from them, for design and engineering work. And when we got it, they had moved to a new location and had some new leadership team members, but a person that was still hanging on there from the past that was kind of had 6 months left. They had kind of recommended us, and then the person called us and turned into a proposal and a sale, and then the rest is history, So like you say, you never know. It could be years before you bear fruit. But I find that no relationship interaction ever goes void, ever goes without some fruit, because somebody knows somebody who can connect some dots or remember, I talked to that guy, and it may not be a direct result. I don't know if you've had this experience, but I've had many collateral consequences or not direct consequences from interacting with somebody, and then somebody else, and I don't even know who they are. They're like, oh, so-and-so told me to call you. Have you had that happen?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I get a lot of that. This business, it's a small world. The people that, who know other people, or stuff you supplied on a project that somebody else has been out there. And, I find, I've got some small customers down in Alabama that did some work for a customer that's doing a high rise in New York. He said, yeah, they outsource some custom work, for us, and we fab some panels for them and send them on up there. And it's like, well, geez, I didn't even know you guys knew each other. But everybody in the industry knows everybody.
Yeah, that is good. If a person wanted to consider doing what you do, like how many days a week, like do you have a pattern? Are there days where you're completely in office and other days where you're completely in field, or do you have a pattern where you're 3 days a week, every week in the field? Like, how does that work for you?
Well, that has changed a little bit, since I've been here at Alloy now for 4 years and I've developed a customer base. When I first started with Alloy, I was in the field 4 days a week, every week, just getting out there. Now, it's split. I'll spend, 1-2 weeks in the office and then maybe a week out in the field. Now, my weeks out in the field are usually pretty full weeks. It's Monday to Friday. Because if I go into an area, I'm going to spend as much time as I need to in that area. But, once you start building those relationships, it doesn't require that I show up, every month, walk in the door and talk to these people. You got to keep that communication open. But, I look at it this way. I'm not going to sell anything to these guys that they don't need to buy.
Yeah, right.
So when they're ready to buy it, I would want to make sure my face, my voice, and my name is, right on top of the list.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
One other thing I do for my customers, and I don't know if sometimes some of these guys get annoyed with me, but when I quote a project, I follow up on that quote until they tell me either we bought it from somebody else or the spec had changed. We're not doing that now. And the reason I do that is you'd be amazed how many times I reach out and my customer says, I didn't place that order already. I said, no, you didn't. We talked about it, but you never placed it. And they're like, oh man, thanks for reminding me. I forgot. And the worst thing is to get on site, all the material shows up and you don't have any fasteners to install anything.
How quickly do you typically follow up? Do you have a certain timeline at which you follow up?
I usually, once a quote goes out, on a project, I'll give the guys, a day or two and follow up to make sure that they got it. Have you looked at it? Do you have any questions? And then it's usually about, every 2 weeks, I try to ask the questions on, hey, when does this project start? What's the project? When are you supposed to be on site? How much lead time do you have if it's a special order or a special manufactured product? So I try to every couple of weeks run through that list and reach out to these customers. And, some of them say, well, yeah, I'm going to buy it. I got to place that order. But they're busy, and the last thing I want is to let them down and them not have what they need when they need it.
I'm really glad you brought this up. That is so true. We talk about that here. Things don't sell themselves. Some things sell themselves. You need toothpaste, you go buy toothpaste, but things just don't. If sales didn't matter, then then everything written on paper and price would be the only thing that was out there, right? And follow-up has such a direct, I do the same thing. Or the people that are delegates here that are doing proposals, I say, you need to follow up within 24 hours. And so I'm like, why would I follow up so quick? No, trust me, I've been doing this a long time. Follow up within 24 hours. To your point, some would say, I didn't even get the proposal. Must have gone to my spam filter. Or I didn't even see that. When did you send it? And then we sent it. Oh, I get it. Or they're misinterpreting something, or we forgot something, and then, like you say, the intel involved. Even in the no, even when somebody says, no, not this time, would you tell me why? And they'll be pretty clear. Like, I'd rather know than not know. And I'm not going to be offended if you tell me no. I just want to understand, is this something, should I be trying again, or am I wasting your time and wasting my time? And follow up has a direct impact. We do the same thing. We'll follow up until we get a yes or a negotiated purchase, or no, that went away, or we're not interested, or we're not going to go. So kudos to you. That's great. You got to follow up regularly.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like I said, these guys are being pulled 100 different directions. Yeah. And the last thing they're thinking about is what they need fastener wise.
And then the other thing we all hear all the time from our trade subcontractor clients on down, and even contractors, but the further down the chain, is like, yeah, I need a price. They're expecting a release in 2 weeks, and then I'm going to need you to start by X. And then 4 weeks later, well, they're still looking at the price. And then 6 weeks later, well, they're going to issue a letter of intent. And then 8 weeks later, well, I'm still waiting for the letter of intent, but they said it's coming, right? Yeah. It just drags and drags and drags. And then when you get the LOI, they're like, you're behind, you better get moving right now.
Well, I always make sure my customers understand that lead time starts when you place a purchase order.
Exactly.
I can't give you a 4-week lead time and you call me in 3 weeks an order and expect it next week. It doesn't work that way.
Exactly. Like, there is a lead time, even if it's an inventory. I've got to pull it. I've got to package. I've got to ship it.
That's right.
It takes a minute to get there.
That's right. I didn't pack it. It's sitting here waiting for you to order it.
Yeah, that's true. I think everybody knows that, but you're right. Then you miss something.
And I think people are getting a little bit better working with lead times, since, the last 3 years with the global supply shortages and things like that. Some of the lead times that have, been pushed way out there. I mean, some of these lead times that we were seeing from vendors overseas, I mean, we were looking at 10, 12 months on delivery on some stuff.
That's ridiculous.
And I think people are getting a little bit better on doing a little bit more planning and understanding that, well, this isn't available, but where I can help is, okay, then what do we need to do on this project?
Yeah.
You need a certain kind of bolt, it's got to have a coating on it. It's not available. It's going to take me 3 weeks. If you need it next week, what else can we look at?
That's good. So you're really a solutions guy. I mean, you're just solving problems for people. You happen to be solving problems using fastening components. We're coming up to the end of our time, believe it or not. I said it moves quickly.
It does.
Let's move to the personal side. I'm always interested, anything you do for hobby or recreation that you enjoy?
Well, John, I love to be outside. I don't like to be cooped up, so I camp, I fish, I like to target shoot, I like to hike. I've got some favorite places down here in North Carolina, and I like to spend as much time on the lake as possible. So anything outdoors like that with my family, I've got a large family. I've got 7 kids, so wow. There's never a lack of somebody to do something with.
That's for sure. Good for you. 7 kids. Any grandkids yet?
Not yet. We're still waiting for the first ones to come around. But, I look at it as, in the course of the day, it's emails, it's phone calls, it's driving in traffic, it's going through the airport. And my time off, the last thing I want to do, and I don't want this to sound bad, the last thing I want to do is be around a lot of people.
Or sit behind your desk and do administrative work, right?
Yeah. So to me, getting on the lake at sunrise is the most relaxing thing to me in the world.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you mean you actually get up earlier or at the same time on the weekend on your free time as you do during the work week?
I do. I get up that same time every day. On the weekends, I may sleep an extra 30 minutes, but I get up same time every day.
It's counterintuitive. One day I said, why in the world, and again, I'm just goofy, why in the world would I want to, unless I don't have any plans and the weather's so, why in the world would I want to sleep in on Saturday? I never could sleep in anyway. Well, this is free time. Like, get at it. Like, because you're working 5 days and you're off 2 or 4 and 3 or whatever it is. So that's
You've always
great.
got a project list, of stuff you need to do.
Yeah. What about, do you read at all, or do you listen to books on tape? Like anything you're reading?
When I travel, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I like to listen to the financial industry out there. I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan, on the way he approaches people's personal finances. I have a hard time listening to music when I drive. It just, I like almost feel like I'm interacting when I listen to things like that.
I get you. Yeah. I used to like to listen to music exclusively when I drove and sing and listen to music and sing. And now sometimes I just can almost tune out talking sometimes. It's almost like it just, it has a different effect.
And sometimes when I drive, I just turn everything off and just listen to the road noise,
Yeah. Do you, and maybe you don't, and that's okay, but I always like to ask people, do you have any particular routines that ground you, that you do every day or consistently, like a morning routine or an exercise routine or a mental muscle routine? Is there anything you do that kind of helps kind of orient you the way you like?
Well, to get my day started, I always, usually get up around the same time. We have a couple dogs in the house, so those dogs get walked every morning. One meal I cannot absolutely miss is breakfast. I've got to eat breakfast every day, so even before anybody else is up in the house, I'm cooking my breakfast, getting the dogs out, kind of getting my morning started. I like to start early, I'd rather start early and finish early than start late and finish late.
Yeah, I hear you. I like it. Yeah. Just, there's different camps, I like getting up early before everybody. Even if I'm sacrificing a little bit of sleep, I prefer to get up before the world is completely coming at me.
Well, and I do that on vacation as well.
Yeah,
when I'm on
too.
vacation, I'm up early, like I mentioned to you, I like to camp. When my son and I go camping, I'm up at sunrise. I'm out on the boat and I'm fishing. And then a couple hours later, he'll call me and say, okay, come pick me up, because I'm not going to waste that time.
I love it. Yeah, that's really awesome. Good for you. You sound like a real family man. Well, we've done it again. We're over an hour. Anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
Well, John, I want to thank you for this opportunity, to explain a little bit about what I do. Anybody that, needs some help, that you think I may be able to help you out, or if I can provide any service to you, feel free to reach out, either through LinkedIn or through the notes at the end of the podcast. And you, John, anything I can do to help you guys out of Weed and Spray, you got my phone number. Don't ever hesitate to give it to anybody.
I've got your card back here on the desk, along with in my phone and on my computer, and I appreciate that. And the same goes for you. Anything I can do to help you at any time, don't hesitate to ask, personally or professionally. Just happy to do whatever I can to help support you and your cause. Thanks for explaining things about those elements that not everybody thinks about fasteners and bolts and anchors and screws and all those things. So, ladies and gentlemen, he's David Raskoskie, Raskoskie. You can look him up on LinkedIn. He is with Alloy Fastener, Inc. That will be in the show notes, along with his LinkedIn profile, their website, their LinkedIn profile, etc., any of the social media posts. I'm John Wheaton, the host of the Creating Structure podcast. You have just listened to another hour plus of this podcast, and I appreciate you. Thank you. We're signing off. Have a great rest of the day.